The gate that didn't blink. They said no one lasted in that house, not a week, not a month, not a season. But Jasmine Carter stepped through the iron gates anyway, breathing slow, counting to 3, holding the picture of her little girl against her heart like a shield she could not drop. The driveway was perfect, the palms were perfect, the marble was perfect. But perfection did not smile back. Margaret Davis, head housekeeper, greeted her without warmth and without name, just a chin lift toward the foyer as if pointing to an invisible line on the floor. Step over it and you belong to the rules here. In the foyer, the marble shone like still water. Clean the floor, Margaret said, placing a cloth as if setting a test paper, then left. Heels clipping like a metronome counting down. Jasmine knelt, wiped, breathed, wiped again. She moved carefully, not only because she wanted to keep the job, but because she had promised a child in a hospital bed that her mother would do anything honest and hard to buy time and surgery and a future. The first hint of perfume arrived before the woman did, a cool, expensive cloud. Then came Malene Bradford, gold hair, sharp eyes, a dress like a red signal. She did not ask for Jasmine's name, did not offer hers. She only looked at the floor, tilted a teacup and let the liquid fall. Now it is not perfect, she said, the words smooth, almost gentle, but the way they landed felt like a small cut. Jasmine swallowed, nodded, and cleaned again. The cook, Nancy Owens, watched from a doorway with folded arms and a face that said nothing. The chauffeur, Ben Thomas, passed with a set of keys and a short measuring glance. The message from the house was clear. This place heats people, especially people like you. Jasmine wiped faster, not frantically, just steady, like rowing a boat across a wide lake. And when she finished, the marble was once more a mirror that showed everything and forgave nothing. Next came the lemon water test. 3 slices, room temperature, no seeds, Margaret said. Not looking up from her clipboard, Jasmine made it, carried it, held the tray with both hands so the glass would not sing with each step. Malene took a sip, set a tiny frown, tipped the glass, let it shatter against the stone. Too cold, she said. Clean, and turned to her mirror. The cold touched Jasmine's ankles, but the fear did not reach her chest. She cleaned, gathered glass like gathering small stars, and thought of Ila's laugh before the monitors, before the IV, before the slow beeping that taught a mother how to count nights instead of hours. The morning became a chain of precision. Flowers rotated by color, books aligned to invisible lines, pillows fluffed to a number Margaret called 9, though no one explained why. When Jasmine finished, Margaret checked with a fingertip and a tilt of her head, then led her downstairs to a small room with a narrow bed, a window too high to see the garden, and a wardrobe that smelled faintly of lavender and old paint. Jasmine set her bag down and took out Isla's picture. 3 months, she whispered. We just need 3 months. On her second day, the test changed shape. Malene ordered a gown steamed in 6 minutes, then changed her mind at minute 5, then asked for the blue one, then asked why the blue one was wrinkled when it wasn't, then walked away, leaving the question like a dropped scarf for someone else to pick up. Jasmine did not chase, she did not defend. She simply hung both gowns back with the care people usually reserve for fragile things they love. By the 3rd day, the staff knew. Jasmine said good morning to everyone in the same voice, Ben included, even though he never said it back. By the 4th day, Nancy noticed Jasmine wipe the handles no one sees and refolded the towel so the seams hid. By the 5th day, Margaret still found dust along the baseboards that wasn't there, and wrote a note anyway. A small yellow square left on the pantry door. You missed this. Jasmine wrote nothing back, but after her shift, she cleaned the baseboards again and again until there was nothing left to find. One night she discovered a faint line scratched into the back of the maid room door, words engraved by a nervous hand. Run. She traced it with her finger, then shook her head. We don't run from storms when someone we love is on the other side, she whispered, and slid Ila's picture under the frame where she would see it the moment she woke. The first real crack in the house arrived with rain. A leak, thin as a silver thread, appeared in the gallery ceiling over a painting everyone whispered about but never touched. Margaret called the estate manager. The estate manager called a contractor for the morning and left a bucket under the drip. Jasmine moved the painting. Instead, quietly, carefully, without asking, because logic and water do not wait for permission. When Ben saw the empty space on the wall, he started to protest, but the drop hit the bucket in that same second, and he just exhaled. "Fine," he muttered, "good call," and walked away a little less rigid than before. That evening, James Bradford returned from a week of meetings, walked through the foyer at a pace that matched a man who measured time in deals, not sunsets. He noticed the gallery space, noticed the bucket, noticed the painting leaning safe on a sideboard. "Who moved it?" he asked. "New maid," Nancy said. Not quite smiling, not quite neutral. James nodded once, the way executives nod when something has been handled without being asked, and continued to his study. Jasmine did not see that nod, but she felt the shift in the air the next morning when Ben said, "Morning first. Small things make a day safer." Still, Malene did not soften. She set schedules that crossed themselves, planted trap questions. "Do you think this dress makes me look tired?" And presented demands with no exit. Polish the first and second floor by noon and do not be seen. Jasmine did not argue with the impossible. She broke it into pieces and did the pieces that mattered. She polished the hall's people, walk, the rooms where guests would pass, the rails that hands hold when people climb. At noon, the house looked like it had taken a deep breath and let it out slowly. Malene said nothing about it, but when she placed her next demand, her voice was a degree less sharp. On the 7th day, a car arrived with boxes for a charity event Malene was chairing. An evening that needed smooth steps and quiet hands. Margaret assigned Jasmine to the closet beneath the back staircase, a catch-all room that held old linens, older hat boxes, and the kind of dust that belongs more to years than to a day. Jasmine sorted and labeled, folded and stacked, and found a shoebox with a camcorder inside, the date written in a teen's rounded script. June 18th. She did not press play, privacy is part of dignity, but she slid the camera into a labeled bin instead of the trash where it had been headed. When she turned, Malene stood in the doorway, eyes unreadable. "You were told to clear this," Malene said. "I'm clearing," Jasmine answered. Calm. "I'm also keeping what belongs, to the family in case someone needs it again. Do you think we keep junk because we might need it? I think people throw away pieces of themselves and wish later that they hadn't." For a second, something human flickered behind Malene's cool mask, then vanished. "Finish by 5, she said, and walked away. At 5:30, the closet was a place a person could breathe. At 6, Jasmine texted a picture of her dinner to Illa and got back a string of purple hearts and a photo of a crayon sun. At 7, thunder rolled across the hills, the kind that makes chandeliers hold their breath. And at 7:03, the house lost power for 3 long seconds, long enough for a soft sound to rise from upstairs. Something like a gasp and a sob at the same time. Jasmine looked up the stairwell, then down at her hands, then up again. The rules said, "Stay in your lane." Her promise said, "Protect what can be protected." She took the stairs 2 at a time, and the house, which had never blinked for anyone, blinked. Storm rules. The charity evening did not wait for weather. Rich calendars rarely do. By 8, caterers rolled in steel racks, florists rushed tall vases, and Ben coordinated drop-offs with a headset and a patience he wore like a uniform. Power returned. Lights steadied, but some of the staff did not. Malene kept moving faster than the fear in her eyes, telling everyone where to put what, how high to set the lilies, which napkin fold looked awake and which one looked sleepy. Jasmine stayed near the seams where things come apart, smoothing them before anyone noticed. She swapped slippery mats for safer ones, added a runner to the gallery where wet shoes would squeak, tucked a towel into her apron because the best tools are the ones you can reach in 1 second. At 8:30, Malene's voice carried from the stairwell, tight, low, the tone of someone trying not to ask for help. Jasmine climbed quietly and found her in the dark of the powder room, hands braced on the marble, breath too fast. "I'm fine," Malene said, which is another way of saying I'm not. "Look at me," Jasmine said, soft, steady, count. With me, 4 in, 4 out. Maline's eyes flashed like someone caught without armor, but she did it. They breathed together until the world returned to its regular size. No one saw except Jasmine and James, who had turned the corner at the last beat and stopped. He took in the picture. His wife breathing, the maid steady. A quiet rescue that left no marks. "Thank you," he said, the words measured but real. Jasmine dipped her head. "Of course, sir," and stepped back into the corridor where invisible things belong. Guests arrived. Cameras, laughter, umbrellas like black coins opening and closing. Maline became performance again. Poised, gracious, perfect posture, perfect smile. But the panic had cost her precision, and small errors began to thread through the night. Seating cards with duplicate names, a gluten-free label on the wrong tray, a donor escorted to the wrong table. Jasmine fixed what she could without being seen. She traded cards like a magician's trick, whispered a correction to the band leader so the opening song matched the honoree's request, slid the gluten-free platter to the right side before anyone with an allergy needed to test trust against chance. Nancy noticed, then Ben noticed, and even Margaret noticed but refused to show it. "Don't be clever," Margaret snapped under her breath when they crossed in the hallway. "Clever people get noticed here." "I'm not trying to be noticed," Jasmine said. "I'm trying to prevent problems." Same thing in this house. Near 9:30, another storm problem appeared. Water pooled by a side door, a hazard between the dessert station and the server route. Jasmine blocked the area with a temporary sign, mopped, dried, and moved a table 3 inches to redirect traffic. A guest complimented the flow and credited the planner. Jasmine smiled and passed in the gallery, where the expensive painting had been. A different kind of crack appeared. Social, not structural. A woman whispered near the empty space. "I heard the new wife is impossible." "Shh," her friend said. "But also yes." Words like that often reach the person they're about, even through thick walls. Later, when the last speech ended, Maline found Jasmine in the service hall. "You prevented a fall," she said, neutral voice but watchful eyes. "You moved my painting before the leak. You corrected a seating error that might have embarrassed a donor. And you had lemon water, ready for me without being asked." "It's on your morning routine," Jasmine replied. "I also asked you to do 4 impossible things this week." Maline continued. "You did not complain. I did the important parts." Maline studied her as if measuring a garment to see where it could be altered. "Loyalty," she said finally, "is rare. Respect is rarer." Jasmine answered, "But one grows the other." For a second, the air felt like it might shift. Then Maline said something unexpected. "I'll give you a bonus if you tell me which of the staff talk about me." Jasmine had never been asked to betray anyone in so few words. "I serve the home," she said, "not gossip. Silence." The bonus vanished between them like steam. "You may go," Maline said, voice flat again, mask back in place. James, who had sent a check to the hospital after hearing a passing word about a little girl's surgery needs, but hadn't yet found the right moment to say so, watched the exchange from the shadow of a doorway, thinking about the house he had built and the house his silence had allowed. After midnight, the guests were gone, the flowers slept, and the thunder moved farther out to sea. Jasmine finished the last checklist and returned to her room. On the inside of her door, she taped a new piece of paper under the scratched word, "Run." It said, "Breathe, count, do the small good thing in front of you." She turned off the light. A message from the hospital glowed on her phone. Good news about a cancellation that could move Illa's surgery up if a deposit landed by Friday. Jasmine closed her eyes, prayed, and promised the morning she would keep going. Far down the hall, Maline sat alone at her vanity. The red dress pooled like a flower around her, the camcorder on the table beside her, the old date staring up like a dare. She pressed play. The tape and the chandelier. The old footage was shaky and kind, the way home videos are. A teenage girl with braces and a soft laugh tried on a thrift store dress, asked a voice off camera if she looked like someone. The voice said, "Like no one," and laughed, not kindly. The girl covered the hurt with a grin that practiced becoming armor. Malene pressed pause and stared at the frozen frame of a kid who would one day freeze other people to stay safe. Morning arrived with sun and workers in the gallery to secure the chandelier before the next event. The estate manager assured everyone the fixture was fine, but the contractor frowned at a hairline crack in the mount. "Replace it," Jasmine heard him tell Margaret. "Don't polish it." Margaret, who balanced budgets like blades, said, "After the weekend." Jasmine wrote the warning in her notebook and underlined it twice. At noon, James surprised the staff by standing in the kitchen with his jacket off, drinking coffee from the same pot as everyone else. He asked short questions, listened, watched. When Jasmine passed, he said, "Thank you for moving the painting." "It was common sense," she answered. "Common sense is uncommon," he said, then lowered his voice. "I heard about your daughter. I'd like to help." Jasmine's throat tightened, but she kept her words simple. "Thank you, sir. Help to her is life." "Then we will move quickly," he said, already pulling out his phone. In the afternoon, a rehearsal walkthrough for Saturday's luncheon brought donors, assistants, and a cameraman for a lifestyle segment. The chandelier crew had not returned. The mount still carried that small, worrying line. Jasmine stood beneath it and felt something in her chest say, "Move, people." She asked Ben to shift the group path 2 steps to the left, to improve camera framing, which was not untrue. They moved. The cameraman grumbled, but followed. 3 minutes later, a screw let go with a sound like a sigh. The chandelier dropped an inch and held, enough for the crew to notice, enough for the estate manager to turn the color of old paper. "Out," Ben said, voice sharp in the best way, and cleared the gallery. No one was hurt, not because the fixture was strong, but because someone listened to the tiny voice that says, "Check one more time." In the ice that followed, blame looked for a body. It found Jasmine first, because she was nearby, because people blame the hands that are visible. "Why were you under it?" Margaret demanded. "Because guests were about to be." Jasmine said. James arrived fast, spoke faster. "We replace it today." Margaret opened her mouth to argue and closed it when she saw his face. "Today," he repeated. And that was the end of it. That evening, Malene came to the kitchen while Nancy and Jasmine plated staff dinners. She looked tired, not from work, but from holding up an invisible wall. "Did you watch the tape?" Jasmine asked before she could stop herself. Malene's head lifted, offended, then confused, then human. "It was mine," she said, as if that answered every question. "It looked like a person trying to be accepted," Jasmine said. "Before, she learned it was safer to make people earn you." Silence. Malene's jaw softened only a little. "People are cruel," she said. "They can be," Jasmine agreed. "Or they can try not to be, even when it costs." "Does it cost you?" "Every day." "Why stay?" "Because love for my child is louder than fear of this house." Malene looked at the plate in Jasmine's hand, and then at the maid herself, like seeing a new angle on a familiar room. "Your daughter," she said more quietly. "What is her name?" "Ela." Malene nodded once, memorizing the single syllable like a password. The chandelier was replaced at night, the kind of job rich houses can do with a phone call and a credit card. Everyone slept easier under the new light. But the house did not change because of the fixture. It changed because someone chose safety when it was inconvenient and dignity when it was optional. On Friday, James wired the hospital deposit without ceremony. He told Jasmine with a simple line. "It's done." She covered her mouth with both hands so her thanks wouldn't break into tears in the middle of the hallway. "Thank you," she managed, words small but full. "Take the call when it comes," he said. "You have my permission." Margaret stiffened at the breach of chain of command, but said nothing. That afternoon, a gossip site published a piece about the Bradford house, a rumor of staff turnover, an unflattering photo of Malene at a past event, a headline that wanted clicks more than truth. The timing was not random. Someone had fed the story. Eyes turned to Jasmine, the newest, the easiest to suspect. She felt the suspicion settle on her shoulders like dust she had not made. Nancy slammed a drawer and said, "Vultures," under her breath, which in kitchen language means "I believe you." Ben said nothing but brought Jasmine a bottle of water and set it near her like a quiet vote. James called his PR team and Malene closed her door. At dusk, a knock came at Jasmine's room. Malene stood there without her armor, hair in a loose knot, no ring light glow, no camera smile. "I watched the tape again," she said. "I recognized the voice. It was my stepmother." Jasmine waited, not filling the silence. "I wanted to be someone no one could laugh at," Malene said, looking past Jasmine at the small, neat bed, the picture taped by the door. "Somewhere along the way I forgot to be a person." "You can remember," Jasmine said. "Do you think the staff will ever forgive me?" "Forgiveness is not a switch," Jasmine answered. "It is a door people open from the inside when it feels safe." "And you?" "I work for the house," Jasmine said, "but I speak for myself. I want to live in a place where dignity is not expensive." Malene nodded, as if that sentence had a weight her arms could hold. "Tomorrow," she said. "Before the luncheon, I want to speak to the staff." "Speak truth," Jasmine said, "and ask what you can fix." Malene took a breath that seemed new in her lungs. "Will you stand near the back?" "Yes." "Thank you." "Don't thank me for the work you have to do." Malene smiled, small, real, and left. In the hall, Margaret watched the door close and felt her control slip. She had run this house under many faces and liked it better when the rich stayed distant and the help stayed afraid. She pulled out her phone and opened a message thread that had already sent one rumor into the world. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard, then began to type again. "The house learns a new word morning gathered in the kitchen where the staff lined. Up with coffee and caution." Malene stood at the end of the stainless steel island, hands flat, eyes honest, voice steady. "I have been unkind," she said without decoration. "I have used power in ways that hurt people. I am sorry." No one clapped, no one cried, but something small moved in the room like a breeze in a closed place. "I will not ask for immediate forgiveness," she continued. "I will ask for a chance to change, and I will start with rules that protect everyone." She slid a paper across the island. 10 lines, clear, simple. Respect language only, no insults, no shouting. Written schedules, no trap tasks. Meal breaks honored. Safety over appearances. A direct line to an HR firm. Outside the house. An anonymous box for issues with weekly review. Training for everyone, including me, at the bottom. Signed, Malene Bradford, James Bradford, and a blank space titled House Manager. "We don't have a house manager," Margaret said, brittle. "We do now," James said from the doorway. "If she accepts," and looked at Jasmine. Jasmine did not rush to fill the space. "Policies protect paper," she said. "Culture protects people. We can start with paper." She picked up a pen, signed, and placed the paper back on the island as if setting a meal for the whole house. Nancy exhaled like someone who had kept her breath for years. Ben nodded once. "About time." Margaret's smile did not reach her eyes. The first week under the new rules felt strange, like wearing shoes on a floor that used to demand bare feet. People asked questions out loud, wrote schedules that matched reality, fixed hazards before polishing displays. When Malene forgot herself and raised her voice, she stopped, apologized, tried again. When a guest spoke rudely to a server, James intervened in real time instead of sending a note after. The house did not become gentle overnight, but it became honest, and honest places are easier to breathe in. The gossip site posted another article, sharper this time, with details only an insider would know, and a photo taken from inside a window. James tightened security, and Ben reviewed camera logs. The trail led to a side door meeting 2 nights earlier. Margaret, a freelance blogger, a promise of a payout and a taste of petty revenge. When confronted, Margaret called it truth to power. "Truth is not the same as harm," Jasmine said, "and power that harms does not become clean because you harmed it back." James dismissed Margaret with severance that followed the law and none of the kindness she had refused to give. Malene watched the woman who had served 3 family eras leave without looking back. Loyalty without love is control, she said quietly, mostly to herself. In Margaret's absence, old routines loosened and new ones took their place. Jasmine set up a morning huddle. In 5 minutes, everyone named one problem to fix and one thing someone else did well. They started solving in the order of safety, then dignity, then beauty. Flowers still opened like soft stars in glass vases, but now the hallway mats didn't slide. The silver still shone, but now a server could eat sitting down instead of in a corner between tasks. A letter arrived addressed to Malene in a careful hand, the handwriting of someone who has not been given many chances to write. It was from a former maid who had jumped a back fence at dawn. "I don't need a job," the letter said. "I need to know if you have changed," Malene wrote back, not with excuses, but with facts, policies, training dates, a donation to a domestic worker legal fund, an invitation to coffee on neutral ground. She signed it with her full name and a phone number that was real. The woman did not reply for a week, then sent a text with one word. Maybe. It was enough. At the hospital, a nurse wheeled Illa into a playroom where paintings of whales swam on the walls. Jasmine read a story until the room felt smaller and safer and full of her voice, when the surgeon walked in with kind eyes and good news about the deposit and schedule. Jasmine closed her eyes and breathed like she had taught other people to do. "We are ready," she said. Back at the house, a fashion magazine asked for a feature. On the new Mrs. Bradford, Malene said yes on one condition. Include the staff in the photos. Include the new policy in the text. Include the number for the domestic worker hotline in the sidebar. The editor blinked but agreed, partly because saying no to a Bradford is expensive, and partly because even magazines like to be near a story that smells like a turn toward good on. The morning of the shoot, Jasmine stood behind the camera line checking the safety tape, the power cords, the tray heights. Malene walked over in flats, not heels, and asked, "Does this look like a house where people can stand up straight?" "More than it did," Jasmine said. "I'm learning." "You are." The photographer asked for one shot of the lady of the house with the woman who keeps things running. Malene looked at Jasmine. "Only if you want to," she said. "I don't want anyone to think I am a symbol," Jasmine answered. "I am a person, and we are a team." "Then let's be a team in the picture," Malene said, smiling a real smile. Jasmine stepped into frame, not as furniture, not as scenery, but as herself. The morning after impossible surgery day came like a sunrise people pray for. Jasmine held Illa's hand while the nurse marked a tiny wrist with a tiny bracelet that meant big hope. They counted down together the way brave people do when the world requires sleep and knives to make a life bigger, not smaller. In the waiting room, Malene sat 2 chairs away so Jasmine could have space. Hands wrapped around a thermos she had filled herself. Nancy sent a text with a picture of a pot on the stove. Soup waiting. Ben sent a thumbs up, and then a second message that said, praying. James arrived with a quiet nod and a stack of forms already signed. Hours later, the surgeon smiled the smile people remember for years. "It went well," he said. "Your girl is a fighter." Jasmine pressed her forehead to her hands and said words. "Only hearts here." When she looked up, she met Malene's eyes and saw tears the younger woman did not hide. "Thank you," Jasmine said to the surgeon, to the world, to every small choice that had led here. "Thank her too," the surgeon added, nodding at Malene. "She set up a fund in your daughter's name for other families who will need this help." Jasmine turned, surprised. "It's called the Illa Fund now," Malene said, cheeks pink with a kind of shyness rich people don't practice often. "Only if you approve," Jasmine swallowed, then nodded. "If it helps others, yes." Back at the house, the foundation paperwork moved as fast as lawyers and purpose can move when money is not the problem and will is. The first grant went to a woman who cleaned offices at night and took a bus to the hospital in the morning. The second helped a doorman's wife. The third was for someone who did not write her name. Only the name of the child who needed the surgery first. Reporters came again, this time for a different reason. They wanted the redemption angle. But Jasmine and Malene refused to sell confession as entertainment. They spoke about policy, not gossip, about training, not tears, about respect, not spectacle. When a journalist asked for a quote about power dynamics, Jasmine said, "The most important thing a powerful house can do is use its power to make power unnecessary." It was the best line the article ran, and they printed the hotline. Number again, bigger this time. In the mansion, small changes kept adding up. The pantry got a stool for shorter staff to reach top shelves safely. The schedule got a real buffer between events. The linen closet got labels that actually matched contents. When a mistake happened, and mistakes still did, voices stayed low, solutions stayed higher than blame. Jasmine learned how to delegate. Like a conductor, not a warden, Ben learned that thank you works better than finally. Nancy learned to send people home after a 12-hour day, even if she could use another pair of hands. James learned that silence is a policy whether you write it or not, and he chose different words. One evening, the house hosted a small dinner with no cameras, no donors, just the people who lived and worked there. Malene stood up with a toast that did not sound like a speechwriter made it. "To courage," she said, looking at Jasmine. "The kind that cleans floors without anger and tells the truth without cruelty. The kind that saves a life and changes a house." Jasmine lifted her glass of tea and said, "To choice." They drank, and the clink sounded like something closing and something opening, both at once. Later, Jasmine took Illa by the hand and walked her slowly down the long hall so she could see where her mother had worked and fought and stayed. The new chandelier threw light like quiet stars. "Is this where the mean lady lives?" Illa asked with the honesty only children have. "This is where a lady who learned lives," Jasmine said. "People can learn. Even grown-ups?" "Especially grown-ups." Illa nodded as if this was a rule she could keep. At the base of the staircase, framed photos showed the house through the years. Weddings, fundraisers, seasons, faces. One new photo sat in the center. A picture of the staff standing together wearing their everyday clothes. Not uniforms, not costumes, people. Below it, a small brass plate read, "This house runs on respect." On the way out to the garden, they passed the closet under the back stairs. Now the neatly labeled supply room. On the top shelf, in a clear box, rested the camcorder. "Can I see?" Illa asked. "Maybe when you're older," Jasmine said, smiling. "It's a story about how people become who they are, and how they can become someone new." They stepped into the evening, palms whispering, air soft. Ben rolled by with a card and tipped an invisible hat to Illa. Nancy called from the kitchen window. 10 minutes dinner." James waved from the study door with a stack of papers he was finally ready to share. Malene walked toward them in flats again and knelt to Illa's height. "I am happy you are strong," she said. "Me too," Illa said, and handed her a sticker of a purple heart, which Malene pressed onto her sleeve like a medal. "People will still tell the story of the house where no maid lasted. They will say the iron gates were like eyelids that never blinked, and the floors like mirrors that judged. They will say there was a young wife who hurt people because she was afraid to be small, and a rich man who learned that not speaking is a kind of speech. But mostly they will say a woman came with steady hands and a brave heart, and did the impossible, not because she shouted, but because she stayed. And the house at last chose what kind of power it wanted to be known for. When Jasmine tucked Illa into bed that night in their own small apartment, paid for with honest work and a bonus that did not ask for her soul, she thought of the scratched word on the door she had once touched with her fingers. "Run." She smiled and whispered to the dark, "We stayed." And somewhere beyond the palms and the marble and the camera flashes, a different kind of story began to travel. Quiet, steady, impossible until it wasn't.